Because I couldn't go, PH Nargeolet took my seat.
These words were said by David Concannon, the man who was behind Oceangate recovery expeditions, and Sixth Passenger of Oceangate, who was supposed to be on that sub. He was scheduled to be there, but a last-minute client crisis pulled him away. The seat he vacated was filled by PH Nargeolet, Mr. Titanic, a man he had known for 25 years. As the sub descended into the abyss, Dave was thousands of miles away, tethered to his phone, receiving real-time updates. Then the updates stopped. The sub was lost. And Dave found himself thrust into a desperate, frustrating struggle to rescue his friends and colleagues from the ocean's depths. In this video, we're going to look at the terrifying new stories revealed in Oceangate Rescue Mission, and we'll also be revealing the winner of the last giveaway and announce a new Titanic Poster Giveaway, so stick around to the end of the video to see how you could win. David Concannon, an underwater explorer and attorney who has participated in several deep-sea expeditions to locate shipwrecks and other sites of interest, was hired by Oceangate in 2017, a company planning to explore the Titanic. Dave was brought on board as an advisor in 2017, tasked with untangling the Gordian knot of legal issues surrounding the expedition. By 2020, Oceangate was ready for its first mission to the Titanic wreck. Dave was there, helping to integrate the ship's crew with the subcrew and providing expertise on the weather and depth conditions. They had taken the training wheels off, he says. They didn't really need me anymore for the operational side of things. But 2023 was supposed to be different. Dave was guaranteed a seat on the submersible Titan for a dive scheduled for June 18th. He was to be the subject matter expert on the Titanic and the wreck site. However, a client crisis arose just 36 hours before his departure, forcing him to give up his seat to Paul-Henri Nargeolet, a deep-sea icon whose expertise on the Titanic led to his fatal association with Rush. On the day of the dive, Dave received updates from the ship until the sub went out of communication. At 6:30 p.m. Titanic time, he received a call from Wendy Rush, Stockton Rush's wife, which served as director of communications for Oceangate and was on board the expedition ship during the Titan submersible's mission, asking him to help organize a rescue attempt. There is no public possibility, no military governmental opportunity for a rescue, Dave says. For the next 5 days, he worked tirelessly to save his friends and 2 people he didn't know, but the efforts were in vain. Dave received the devastating news within 12 hours of being asked to help. Neither the US Navy nor the Coast Guard confirmed the sub's implosion, but their actions spoke volumes. At no time did they act with any sense of urgency, Dave says. They were just throwing roadblocks up from the very beginning.
I received a phone call from Wendy Rush asking me to help organize a rescue attempt through the private sector.
The clock was ticking, and every second mattered. Yet the US Coast Guard and Navy seemed to be playing a different game, one that didn't prioritize urgency. Dave was not alone in his efforts. Wendy Rush, the wife of Oceangate's owner, Stockton Rush, who was on the missing sub, was also deeply involved. Wendy calls me and says, "Can you do this?" Dave recalls, "I never asked the Coast Guard to get involved. I never would have. They don't have the expertise or the assets for deep ocean exploration. The only viable option was private enterprise, specifically Magellan in the Channel Islands, a company with the most detailed knowledge of the wreck site and the equipment to conduct a search and recovery. They could have been on site and working within the next 48 hours or less," Dave says. But the US Coast Guard took jurisdiction and refused to cooperate. They sent a boat with 2 3,000 meters capable ROVs to find a sub lost at 4,000 meters. But guess what? The pressure crushed them. That was the second implosion on the same day. The situation took a turn when tapping sounds were heard from the ocean depths. These rhythmic sounds, increasing in frequency, forced the US government to act. It took President Biden to order the mobilization of Magellan, Dave says. And then within an hour, he cancelled it. Dave was not alone in his frustration. The British, Canadians, and French were also trying to move mountains put in place by the US Navy and the US Coast Guard.
It got so bad that we ended up having a US congressman on every communication and every phone call with the Navy.
The world watches, unbeknownst to Dave. As Dave was engrossed in the rescue efforts, he was unaware that the world was watching. "I had no concept whatsoever that the whole world was watching and that every single person watching had an opinion, mostly negative," he says. "So I didn't know there was a YouTube video about me with something like 300,000 views and 67,000 negative comments." For Dave, the focus was singular: rescue the people on the Titan. "I have 96 hours. I'm not going to cry about that now or maybe never. But I have other things that have to get done first," he says. You compartmentalize it, and you just push forward. Now. The sub was eventually found, but the outcome was not what anyone had hoped for. Some people were sighing relief because they weren't responsible for the deaths of 5 people, but for people who were on the rescue operations, things were different. At 02 Tuesday morning, local time, the tapping started. It was heard by multiple ships in the area, and the Canadians had dropped sonobuoys that were picking it up. The tapping was rhythmic, and it was more than just random ocean noise. They actually recorded it on the receivers they were using. And the manufacturer came back and said, it sounds like somebody's tapping at regular intervals. Just when it seemed like there was a glimmer of hope, the US government's stance shifted again. About 15 minutes later, we got a phone call from the Situation Room at the White House sitting with President Biden. He's going to authorize Magellan, Dave recalls. But an hour later, Magellan was stood down. They just cancelled us, Dave says. Dave's mind races as he tries to make sense of the conflicting signals and the US government's puzzling behavior. I feel like another government with another submersible was messing with us, he says. I feel like potentially they were just testing our response. Just like the Kursk submarine disaster in Russia, where tapping sounds from trapped sailors had prompted action. Why not give President Biden his Kursk moment? Dave speculates. Why not test your enemy's ability to respond to tragedy, such as a disabled submersible, a disabled nuclear sub, and see what they'll do? See who they send, see how long it takes. The Kursk disaster was President Vladimir Putin's first lie. The lies began with the sinking of the Kursk. When the Kursk sank, the government began interfering with the legal and law enforcement systems. The government began gathering all the mass media under its control. The entire process of undermining democracy in Russia, in many regards, began with this. Most of the Kursk's crew of 118 apparently died instantly in the explosions that sent a giant fireball and shockwave ripping through the Kursk's first 5 compartments, or within minutes as water roared into the submarine. Russian officials believed the note was written at least 2 hours after the sub began to sink. Anyways, let's return to the Oceangate rescue process. The juxtaposition between the government and the private sector was just stunning and difficult to handle, Dave says. We were all just trying to get there in time, and that made the loss of my friends and the people I knew even harder. Based on my knowledge and experience with deep submersibles, I believe that the sub imploded at about a depth of 10,000 feet, he says, drawing on his extensive experience in underwater exploration, including the recovery of Apollo rocket engines. Dave's disappointment with the United States Coast Guard is palpable. I felt as if somehow somebody had put the head of the Civil Air Patrol in Kissimmee, Florida, in charge of rescuing the astronauts on Apollo 13, he says, emphasizing the lack of expertise and urgency he felt was evident in the official response. Reminder that the Navy was able to detect the Oceangate's implosion. Meanwhile, the media ran wild with their doomsday timer scenarios. They knew it imploded almost immediately, and more importantly where, with accuracy. Yet their hydrophones somehow aren't able to detect an airliner splattering into what is essentially concrete. It doesn't make any sense, especially considering how their fleets are everywhere, and IRC, there were nearby military exercises. They should have been able to detect the crashing into the ocean. The newly suspicious thing is not that they didn't disclose this information to the public, it's the fact that they potentially lied about not knowing where it crashed, assuming it did. Dave also addresses the criticism that emerged after the tragedy, particularly concerning the sub's design and safety measures. There was always this attention to safety, he insists. Every single person on the boat had the authority and the ability to cancel a dive. He explains that the Titan had multiple redundant safety systems and a rigorous risk assessment process. They had these meetings at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Ops meetings, they were mandatory. Everybody was required to attend, he says, emphasizing the team's commitment to safety. Despite the best preparations, you can still be quite unaware. Something can still happen that you don't suspect, Dave says, acknowledging the inherent risks of deep-sea exploration. We don't know what caused the sub to implode. There could be a million reasons why it did. It wasn't for lack of effort, he says. But what about expert thoughts? Dave named the various experts he consulted, like PH Nargeolet, who reassured him about the sub's safety. If Werner von Braun tells you that the Saturn V rocket is safe to take you to the moon, are you going to question his qualifications? Dave asks rhetorically. It was all about the design of the Titan because it was a point of contention within the deep submersible community. Because the lack of existing certification standards for a submersible like the Titan, made of carbon fibre and cylindrical in shape. Stockton did seek out advice from pretty much anybody. He would listen to anybody, Dave says, defending Stockton's approach to safety and innovation. Dave emphasizes that there was a genuine culture of safety, Not just safety theatre, as some critics might suggest. He also talks about the multiple ways one could die in a sub, saying, implosion is the best bad outcome, but there's also fire, freezing to death, suffocation, and drowning. Nobody was misled, he says. He even gave safety briefings where he made sure to capture on camera that each participant understood the life-threatening risks involved. If you're going to take a risk, you should assess the risk. Dave acknowledges that everyone in the deep submersible community has had issues and problems. You learn from your mistakes, and you learn from their mistakes, and you try not to repeat mistakes, he says. He also mentions that the Titan had undergone numerous tests, including ones that led to its failure, which were then addressed in its next version. He revealed that the lawsuit by David Lockridge against Oceangate was settled quickly and quietly. Lockridge was repeatedly told that no scan of the hull or bond line could be done to check for delaminations, porosity, and voids of sufficient adhesion of the glue being used due to the thickness of the hull. Lockridge was told that no form of equipment existed to perform such a test, and Oceangate instead would rely solely on their acoustic monitoring system that they were going to install in the submersible to detect the start of hull breakdown when the submersible was about to fail. Lockridge again expressed concern that this was problematic because this type of acoustic analysis would only show when a component is about to fail, often milliseconds before an implosion, and would not detect any existing flaws prior to putting pressure onto the hull. The full lawsuit document, I will attach it in the description down below so you can review and share your thoughts in the comments section. Dave admits to having nightmares for weeks after the incident. These are the things that come to you in the middle of the night, he says. Despite the second guessing and the emotional toll, this man was supposed to be on that submersible that imploded. He should have died instead of PH Nargeolet. But it's all God's plan. Dave is candid about the risks involved in exploration, whether it's diving deep into the ocean or riding a motorcycle. He emphasizes the importance of being transparent about these risks, not sugarcoating them. It's not physically possible or mentally possible to do this and not realize that it is incredibly dangerous and you may not survive, he says. The societal tension between the desire for safety and the admiration for those who take risks. Because we live in a society that we try to limit our risks. All of us do, but we also idolize those people who step into the breach and take the risks. But there will always be people willing to take those risks, driven by curiosity and the desire for discovery. There's adventurers who go from point A to point B and recount what they did, and explorers who go from point A to point B and share what they learned. That's truly, in my opinion, the definition of an explorer, he says. He argues that the drive for exploration is a fundamental part of human nature. Dave admits that he's been to many funerals of friends who died while exploring. He hates the expression, "he died doing what he loved," calling it a lie. I can analytically tell you what the trigger and what the first link in the causal chain was and what every other link was thereafter, and that doesn't bring them back, he says. In conclusion, it's clear that the ethical and emotional complexities of exploration weigh heavily on the person doing it. I don't believe that we should take risks that are stupid, really, but in my view, the risk of an injury is too high and the certainty of an accident is also too high, so those two lines are going to intersect for every motorcyclist. You've either been down or you're going to go down. Before the Titan's last descent, there hadn't been a fatal accident in a human-occupied submersible for nearly 50 years, despite a 2,000% increase in the annual number of dives in that period. In the 93-year history of manned deep-sea exploration, no submersible had ever imploded. Ultimately, it comes down to not just technology, but the rigor of the nerdy, detailed engineering that goes behind it to determine that things are predictable. And now time for the giveaway winner. The winner of last video giveaway is Richard Avery. Congratulations. Please leave us a comment below with your email or any preferred contact method. In the next video, we'll be giving away 5 more Titanic posters that is going to be shipped to your location anywhere in the world. To participate, simply leave a comment down below telling us what do you think of David Concannon and the rescue operation. We're excited to hear about your top picks. Once you've commented, make sure you're subscribed to our channel and have notifications turned on so you won't miss out on any future giveaways or videos from us. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. The winner will be randomly selected and announced in the comments section of our next video, so stay tuned for that. If you're the lucky winner, we'll get in touch with you directly to arrange the shipping. Good luck, everyone, and we can't wait to read your comments. From everyone here, thank you so much for watching, and as always, keep the passion alive. Until the next video, take care and see you soon.